Hello, class. So, this week we're going to be discussing understanding interpersonal relationships. And I think this is probably one of the more significant parts of our textbook. If you're part of any relationship, whether it be friends or romantic relationships or co-workers, it all comes down to actually understanding how to navigate those relationships, and communication is an important aspect of how we deal with interpersonal relationships. And communication, whether it's effective communication or ineffective communication, has huge bearings on whether the relationship is a healthy, beneficial one, or whether it's something that's more destructive. So, as we go through this chapter, I really want you to start thinking about the relationships that you are in and see if there are times where you can apply some of the concepts that we cover to your interpersonal relationship dynamic. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So, I think it's going to be a good time. Understanding interpersonal relationships. So, what do we need to go over first? First thing we need to do is understand what the definition of interpersonal communication is. So, interpersonal communication refers to a small number of people, usually two, that interact and generate meaning with verbal and nonverbal communication. In other parts of the communication discipline, it's referred to as communication dyad, meaning two people, and it includes both verbal and nonverbal communication. The other end of it, we have impersonal communication, and I think it's important to be able to differentiate between impersonal communication and interpersonal communication. Where interpersonal communication requires usually two people that interact and generate meaning, impersonal is a little different. Impersonal communication is communication to many people with no emphasis on quality and depth of a relationship. So, give you an example. Interpersonal communication would occur in, for example, a romantic relationship would occur within family. It can occur amongst best friends. Impersonal communication would occur in a situation like if you're working in a telemarketing company and you had to answer the phone and talk to person after person after person after person. In no way are you going to really develop depth in relationship with that person because it's not really that type of relationship. It's more focused on quantity rather than quality. So hopefully that example could help you differentiate between interpersonal and impersonal communication. Relationship is a continued and meaningful attachment or connection to another person. And what qualifies as personal relationships? And you can look at it in your own lives. Just because maybe you don't live in the same state or city as somebody, you can still have a relationship with them. I think especially with technology and how Facebook and social media has kept us in contact with one another, how we can communicate in real time even though we're separated by a great distance. We can still maintain relationships with our friends and our loved ones. Professional relationships are connections with people you associate and work with to a goal or perform a task. So why do we need relationships? I kind of joke around with this with my my other classes. I tell them when we cover this this topic, I say you either communicate or you die. Either you are in relationships with somebody else or you'll die. And it seems so grim that I say that. And if you look to the left of the screen, you see like the life and death markers. And but with all kidding aside, I usually follow this by saying, hey, please identify which statement is true. I say people with good friends usually have less stress and live longer. Is that statement true? Or longevity is determined far more by the state of people's closest relationships than by genetics? Or people who have good marriages live longer than those who don't? Or loners are twice as likely to die from all causes over a 5-year period as those who enjoy close friendships. So out of those 4 statements, which one is true? Well, it turns out all of them are true. Basically, we need relationships to not only enjoy life, but to live a long life. The less relationships, the less healthy relationships you have, the shorter your life expectancy is. So learning how to nurture your relationships and learning good communication and healthy forms of communication in your relationships not only impacts your emotional well-being, but it actually can impact your physical well-being. You can see some of the worst punishments that we can ever give a person in this country is solitary confinement. Being isolated from people is one of the worst things that you can do, because it actually does have serious implications on our health. So forming meaningful connections with other people is tremendous for us, and we're going to talk more about that. So other than just living and dying, why do we need interpersonal relationships? Well, there is Frio theory, which maintains that we actually need relationships to satisfy some basic needs. And there's three needs that the Frio theory talks about. It's the need for inclusion, need for control, and need for affections. So let's start with the first need for inclusion. So actually we seek relationships because we need to be included. We need to feel like we're belonging to something. In the last chapter, I had you guys watch a monologue by Jamil Scott, and she did the whole thing about articulation. And you could see how language was such an important part of her life, because with language, it allowed her to develop a sense of connectivity and solidarity with different social groups. And without it, it would have prevented her from having the same connection with the various groups that she values. So in an interpersonal communication setting, we need to feel included. We need to feel included, whether it's our family or a group of friends or a group of colleagues. We form relationships because we need to belong. Second thing is need for control. I know this sounds weird, like maybe you're thinking like, I don't need to control other people. It doesn't mean that you need to be controlling, but you need to control in the sense that you need to feel that your life matters. For example, if I got home from work today, and let's say, heaven forbid, I found out from the doctor I had 6 months to live, and I come home and tell my wife that, and she's just skipping around the kitchen like doesn't mean anything, like it's no big deal, that would really affect me. I would feel devastated, because I would need to know that my life affects her life. You know, if I came home and lost my job, you know, I'd feel pretty sad. And if she was feeling happy and I was feeling sad, I would feel like, whoa, what's going on? I need to know that my life affects her life to some extent, to the extent her life affects mine. If something happens to her, my life would be affected. If she lost her job, I would be equally as sad too. So to what extent what happens in your life affects another person's emotional well-being is the control factor in the life. It doesn't mean you're controlling the person, but your life actually does have bearing on their emotional status as well. And that's where control factors in. The last is the need for affection. So, you know, that's pretty self-explanatory. We need affection. We need affirmation, whether it's a hug or just a pat on the back. Those type of things mean a lot to us, and we need those things in order to maintain a healthy relationship. A couple quick tips on conversing with others. It talks about conversation, and it defines conversation as typically an informal interaction in which we exchange listening and speaking role with each other. There's open-ended questions, and you might get this on an exam. So example of an open-ended question is, how was your weekend? Okay, and that allows people to open up and expand. Then we have closed-ended questions. And closed-ended questions are you able to work on weekends? Okay, typically the acceptable response to closed-ended questions are yes and no. Okay. Turn-yielding cues are part of conversations. So something as simple as raising your hand or asking a question or pointing at somebody when you're ready for them to speak is all part of conversing with others. And just a tip, remember ending conversations to end conversations on a polite, positive note. So we're going to talk a little bit more about personal relationships. Not all relationships are created equal. I think we all know that. Um, and remember, to the extent that they're not created equal, it actually influences how we communicate. For example, if you have a friend that you really, really admire, you might be more inclined to listen to them more. Think about if you're in a relationship with somebody, or let's say a romantic relationship, and they start telling you what to do. They start communicating what their expectations are, and they're telling you, hey, this is how it's going to work out. You might sometimes find yourself sitting there saying, whoa, 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 slow down. What are you doing? You're not the boss of me, right? I think we've all been guilty of using that term with somebody. You're not the boss of me. What basically you're saying, if you think about it, is that you don't have the right to speak to me or communicate expectations to me because you don't occupy that role in my life. You're saying that if they were your boss, or you're in a professional setting at a job, then it's acceptable for the person who's overseeing you to communicate their expectations to you. So if they're, depending on the role, if it's a manager and you're the subordinate, then they're allowed to communicate expectations to you. But if it's your girlfriend or your boyfriend or somebody who's equal to you, they don't have the same permission to communicate the same way. So think about how we have different relationships, and the type of relationships that we have defines, and the roles of those relationships define what's acceptable communication and what's unacceptable communication. It's not always defined by a straight baseline of what's acceptable and unacceptable. A lot of times the roles that people occupy allow for us to either accept or deny the communication, to see it as appropriate or as inappropriate. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Intimacy is the feeling or state of knowing somebody deeply. Family is a self-defined group of intimates who create and maintain themselves through their own interactions with each other. Notice in this definition, in no way did they say that family is blood related. I don't know about you, but I have family. I have family of mine that aren't blood related, and I'm sure in a lot of cases, you out there might consider people as your family, but not have necessarily a blood tie to them. In looking at family is always evolving. In 1960, only 45% of U.S. families were actually considered nuclear families. That means a mom and a dad in the home with kids, right? And then now, according to 2010, only 23% of U.S. families are considered nuclear, meaning mom and dad, 2 kids, a garage, a car, golden retriever. People aren't doing that anymore. So family, and our understanding what family is actually evolving today. So let's look at romantic relationship stages. If you've ever been a part of a romantic relationship that's actually ran its course, I think you might be able to identify some of these stages. Maybe you've been in a romantic relationship and it's your first love, and it's just grown and been great, and there's never been any decline, then that's great. But in case you've ever been in a position like the rest of us who've actually been in a relationship where it's been great and then it falls apart, I think you can identify with some of these stages. So let's take a quick look at them. There's initiating, which is just a caution assessment of the other person. Maybe you find somebody who's attractive in the workplace. You're like, man, this guy's really cute, or this girl's really cute. And you are kind of assessing, are they cool? Are they nice? Do they like me? And then if you determine that they are a person worth pursuing, you go into the experimenting stage, which you look for more similarities and common interests. Maybe music, maybe food, maybe dancing or art. But you try to find some things that you have in common. And that leads to intensifying, which is more physical contact, maybe a hug, more conversation, and then you start opening up in self-disclosure, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but you start opening up about yourself. I don't know if you've ever been in a position before when people don't understand these types of stages, and sometimes you get people who start intensifying before they even initiate. They start opening up and start self-disclosing personal stuff, and you just met them. It's pretty awkward, right? So typically we like for it to follow this progression, but it doesn't always The next step is integration, where integrating, where personalities and opinions join together. Individuals become a couple. You start sharing friends. Okay, I don't know if that's ever happened, where you're getting along and things are starting to roll along, where you start introducing and integrating friends into each other's lives. Not only that, but I can remember in my relationship with my wife when we were dating. First, for the first, I'd say 6 months, we'd have this conversation. What would the weekend will be approaching? We'd say, "Oh, what are you going to do this weekend?" Right. But then after 6 months, as it started to get more serious, after around a year or so, we started changing, and she would sit there and say, "Hey, Chris, what are we doing this weekend?" So it was a slight change. And thinking about it, that's integrating, right? That means that we're doing things together. That means we're probably sharing friends. That means that she knows my family and I know her family, and that maybe we can do something with my family or her family. But it becomes a we conversation, and some of the relationships I think you guys can identify. That's kind of you've hit the integrating stage where it's what are we going to do this weekend, because you're sharing friends, you're sharing activities together. Bonding is the couple makes a public commitment to one another and enjoys a stable relationship. So maybe it's moving in together, maybe it's marriage, but everybody knows that you are an item. Okay, so that is bonding. You guys are together. Now, maybe you're able to stay at that stage, and if you do, kudos to you, and I hope it lasts forever, but sometimes it doesn't. Which brings us to the coming apart stages. Okay, and that's why you see the little heart up there. It's broken. Thought that was a nice touch. So there's differentiating, which each person has a distinct and different character. More use of I, my needs, instead of you, and you are doing this wrong, instead of we and our. And typically you're going to have more conflict when you start looking for I and you more than we and our. Right. One of the major detractors of a relationship is selfishness. If you really think about it, a lot of it comes down to selfishness when you start putting yourself beyond the other person. And so we see that in the differentiating stage. Circumscribing, you start to talk less. Then stagnating, communication shuts down. More time and attention is devoted to work and other friends. And then there's avoiding, where you just don't spend time together. Communication actually becomes antagonistic and unfriendly. You're angry at each other. And then termination. And that's when you basically decide that the relationship is over and you're going to look out for you. Yeah, sometimes you hear the terms on TV, you do you, boo-boo. All right? They say that. That's termination. When you sit there and finally throw your hands up and say, you know what, I'm done dealing with this. You go do what you need to do. There's a movie that really demonstrates these stages better than anything. It's with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn. It's called The Breakup. If you ever see that, if you've ever seen the movie, it does these stages of the coming apart stages. It's funny, but it's painfully true, and it does it pretty accurately. So if you ever get a chance, watch the movie and see if you can identify these stages in the movie. So let's talk about opening up to others. Now, I have an onion on there for a reason, and it's not because onions make you cry, and therefore opening up to others make you cry. It's for another reason, so let's look at it. Self-disclosure is a process of sharing with others personal information, opinions, emotions that would not be otherwise known. So basically, it's peeling away the layers and opening up to people. And if you think about it, there's a healthy way to, or a proper or appropriate way to self-disclose. So when you're meeting somebody, let's say you're going on a first date, hopefully you're talking about light topics, maybe interests, hobbies, things you like to do, places you've gone. Hopefully you're not opening up with, asking each other what's your credit score, what's your health like, that's a little deeper. What are your greatest fears? Those are not topics for first dates, right? So Appropriate self-disclosure starts with surface level stuff, and as you get to know and trust a person more, you start opening and revealing more. And we are selective about what part of us we communicate, and I think I think we're right to do so. So if you look on page 123 of your book, and this is important, I really want to encourage you to grab your book because it's kind of hard to draw out. Actually, it's on page 124. I'm sorry. On page 124 of your book, it shows what's called Johari's window. And looking at Johari's window, there's a window with 4 panes. And you have first the open area on the upper left-hand corner, the blind area on the upper right-hand corner, the hidden area on the lower left-hand corner, and then the unknown. Okay? So basically what the open area means is that that's the part of you. This window represents you. The 4 panes, the window represents you. And the open area is the part of you that everybody knows, okay? That's not hidden from anybody. So, for example, with me, even though we're taking this class online, I'm sure you guys probably know some things about me. Number one, you guys know that I'm a man. That's pretty out in the open. And I think another thing that you guys might know about me is that I'm African American. And then another thing you might know about me is I teach communications at Gateway Community College. Okay, so these aren't things that are hidden. I'm not trying to hide these from anybody. It's pretty apparent. Okay, then the next area of and before I move on, think about yourself, right? What are some things that people you don't hide from people? They just know they just know these things about you. Maybe it's the fact that you're a woman, that you are 5'3". That you drive a blue car, that you live in Phoenix, that whatever it is, there are things about you that are just open. There's things about you that's just an open book. People just know it. And then there's a side of you that is, if you look at the lower left-hand corner, if you go down from open area to hidden area, that's the part of your personality or persona that you kind of keep hidden from other people. Maybe it's something about your health. Maybe it's your credit. Maybe it's maybe it's a fear. Maybe it's an addiction. But these are things that you kind of keep hidden from other people, and you don't readily disclose or open up to people about. And then if you look at the upper right-hand corner, it's the blind area. And that's the part of you that you don't even know. You may not see these things about you, but other people see these things about you. Maybe that you think that you're a very giving person, but you don't realize that your friends actually see you as, kind of a tightwad. Maybe I give an example. A person who thinks that they are just supportive of their friends and supportive at work, but their friends see him as a backstabber. All right, that's a blind area. So that's an area of who you are that you're blind to. You can't see it, but other people can see it. Okay, I have friends who think that they are just giving people, and I got to tell you, I think they're stingy. All right, they're blind to the fact that they think they're giving. And then the last part is the unknown, and that's the part of your persona that you don't know about yourself, and other people don't know about yourself. And these are areas that we are still growing and learning about ourselves. Okay, there's parts of us that we don't even know yet. And I'm sure you guys have had situations in your life where you've had certain skills or abilities or talents, and it takes a situation to bring out these things. You're like, whoa, I never knew I was good at this. Or there might be things that you don't like about yourself, and you don't realize it until something happens, right? Maybe you don't realize how little patience you have until you have a kid. And then it makes you aware, I thought I was a patient person, but gosh, I'm not. I have these kids, and they're driving me crazy. So just think about that. And that's unknown, and sometimes those areas that are unknown to us become revealed. Okay, so that's Johari's window. Read more about it on page 124. That's going to be important. So social penetration theory is the bonding process in which individuals move from superficial communication to more deeper, intimate communication. And that's on page 125. But think about it, just like the onion, right? When you get to know somebody, maybe developing a relationship, whether it's maybe a romantic relationship or a very deep friendship, when you meet the person, they know you're very guarded and you share with them surface level stuff. But as you start to trust them more, You start to self-disclose and open up more, and it moves from superficial communication to more deeper communication. So to the extent that happens is social penetration theory. All right, so Jack Gibbs lists 6 defensive messages, and here's what I want you guys to do. This was listed on, he lists not only the defensive but supporting messages. We won't go through all of them, okay? I want you to read them, okay? And that's on page 126. I would just say the one that really stands out to me is strategy. Make sure you pay attention to that, because you might see that one. It manipulates others, it hides or disguises personal motives. And the reason why I point this one out is because I remember at the beginning of the semester I talked about communication. Effective communication is part of it is having a goal, right? And I don't think that's bad. Having a goal in communication is really important. But remember to be in the moment with people. Remember not to have such an ulterior motive, or don't let a goal, like, hey, I want this person to do this and this is what I'm going to talk to them about. Don't let a goal turn into strategy, to where you start trying to manipulate, or the only word I can really think is handle them and disguise your motives. If you have a goal, hey, listen, I really want to talk to you because my goal, you need to say it. If your best friend is doing something that offends you, don't sit there and have a conversation so that they can trip on their own sword and fall over their words and realize that you're right and they're wrong. Don't be manipulative like that. If your friend is doing something wrong, come out and say, hey, here's the reason why I'm talking to you, because this is what I want to address. We need to fix this problem. Be forthcoming with what you want. Don't try to disguise it, because it comes across as manipulative, and that's strategy, and it's not open communication. All right, and the rest of them you can read on it. I know you guys are good readers. All right. Same thing goes with supportive behaviors. I'm not going to go over all of them, but supportive behaviors create a climate in which self-disclosure and responsiveness to feedback benefits both parties. That's the area of communication you want to be in. All right, it's healthy for relationships. It's healthy for you. And what I want to point out is spontaneity. So the opposite of spontaneity is strategy. We talked about what strategy is, and that is not good. Spontaneity is living in the moment. Okay. Being straightforward and honest with people. If somebody's doing something that offends you and you need to deal with it, be open with them. Don't sit there and try to, deal with it by asking them a bunch of questions to trap them and then be like, aha, you're wrong. You're a bad person. Don't do that. If they're doing something that offends you or that is causing problems in your relationship, talk with them and be open and saying, hey, this is the issue and I'm committed to solving this. Let's talk through it. And that's spontaneity. It's communicating in the moment and being open and transparent. And the rest of them, you can read through. If you have any questions, you can always let me know. All right, let's talk about emotions. So emotions are feelings you experience when reacting to a situation, often accompanied by physical changes. So a lot of times we communicate based off our emotions, okay? Our emotions, we have to acknowledge them. If they're unchecked, they can actually really alter the way we're communicating with people because we're not communicating honestly. So emotional intelligence is the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and the feelings of others, okay? And I have a video on emotional intelligence. I think I might show that and have you guys weigh in on it because I think it's a really good video. So we'll see. But I like the video that I chose for this example. And recognizing your own feelings and acknowledging and recognizing emotional complexity. I think a lot of times, and this is just it's just me being real. A lot of times in communication, we fail to recognize the significance of our emotions. So what we try to do is we try to disguise our emotions and bury our emotions, and then we end up communicating in a way that's super pretentious, and it can cause all kinds of problems. I'll give you an example. When I first met my wife, she was doing her MBA through ASU, and she decided that she was going to do a focus in international business. So the first trip she took was to Argentina. So she had a dog. I love the dog. Dog was cool. She made me watch her dog. She said, "Hey, can you watch for my dog?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So she spends 3 weeks in Argentina. Then she gets back, and I'm kind of irritated. So then, but I couldn't really say anything. I just kind of buried it. So then she gets an opportunity to do another 3-week trip to Chile. So she spends 3 weeks in Chile. And I'm watching her dog again. Working every day. I see these pictures posted on Facebook of what a great time she's having in Chile. And I'm irritated. But I can't say anything because I'd be that jealous boyfriend. So I just bury it. So then she takes another trip to Germany and then for 3 weeks, and then China 6 months later. By that time, I'm furious, and I just erupt, and I was so mean and kind of rude and disrespectful. Well, why was I disrespectful? Why was I angry? I was angry because I was jealous. But what happens is we demonize jealousy. And so we think that that's an emotion that's so bad we can't even acknowledge it, so we bury it because I didn't want to be the jealous boyfriend. I'm not jealous that she was going to do something that would jeopardize our relationship. Jealous because I didn't get to go. That she was having fun without me. And that really caused a lot of strain in our relationship because I didn't really recognize my own emotion. So really take inventory of your emotions. And if you're jealous, if you're angry, if you're envious, if you're upset, if you're disappointed, acknowledge those things and get a hold of them before they start surfacing in your relationship and come out as anger. All right? And you don't want that to happen. So I want to encourage you guys to start taking inventory of your emotions, identify them, and deal with them before they surface as something that's even worse. And when I say recognize emotional complexity, it's okay to share multiple feelings. I say avoid binary emotional mentality. What I mean by that, that's a big word, binary emotional mentality. What I mean by that is some people are hot and cold with their emotions. I think you know people like this. Either they love you or they hate you. There's no in between. Either you're their friend or you're their enemy. There's no in between. All right. It doesn't have to be like that. There's more emotions than just love and hate. Okay. So start seeing, okay, I don't hate this person, but I might be disappointed in them. I might be frustrated with them. There's more emotions than just love and hate. Don't automatically go there. Look at what emotions that are actually in between there and actually have more complex emotions than just on and off, if that makes sense. Consider when and where to express your feelings. Remember, communication context does matter. Accept responsibilities for your feelings. All right, jealousy is an intense feeling caused by a perceived threat to the relationship. Now, there is reactive jealousy, which occurs when a person becomes aware of a real threat or danger to the relationship. And there's also suspicious jealousy, and that is that your partners might have done something to threaten the future of the relationship. So you need to be able to differentiate between the two. Emotional support are specific lines of communication that are used by a party with the intent of helping others. And let's talk about constructing comforting messages. In order to do that, you have to communicate your intentions. And remember, in doing comforting messages, protect the other person's self-esteem. Don't embarrass them. Make sure you can help them save face. Offers person-centered messages. And that's really messages that are really centered around helping them provide a solution to a problem.